empathy. Oh, they sound close. Completely different. The big thing with empathy is that the other person is the main focus, right? The definition I like best is that empathy is what allows me to step out of my bubble and into yours. But the point is that I do actually step into your bubble, and in doing so, I leave mine behind. If I'm actually giving empathy, I am completely in contact with the other person. It has nothing to do with me at all. Sympathy, on the other hand, is when you don't get out of that bubble. You're relating to the other person, but through your own eyes, which is why people that are giving sympathy sometimes have these phrases that just seem like they don't quite fit, because they don't fit with empathy at all. They seem kind of callous and they seem kind of off. And it's because they're saying these things to make themselves feel better and not the other person. For instance, if there's someone who's grieving, there's someone who's really sad, you'll hear something like, oh, well, at least she didn't suffer long. Or, chin up, you still have your health. Or, everything happens for a reason. Now, I'm not debating the truth of these statements, because maybe they're true, maybe they're not. It's not about what's true. It's about the fact that these things are being said to make the person who should be giving empathy feel better, instead of the person who should be getting empathy. And in that regard, what they're giving is not empathy, it's sympathy. They're looking at this person through their own eyes. It's also when you get judgment coming into things like this, which judgment just isn't good, whether it's against yourself or against somebody else. You know, oh my God, thank God it wasn't me. That sort of thing. Or, well, how could you get yourself into this? Empathy is not about judgment. And in fact, empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space. Let me say that again, because that's really important. And if you walk away from this video with only one thing, I want it to be that. Empathy and judgment cannot exist in the same space. So if at any time you think you're giving empathy, but you feel that judgment coming up, it's not empathy, it's sympathy. And sympathy actually has very negative connotations. In healthcare, they're actually trained not to use it because of that judgment aspect. Because if you're a patient and you're having the worst day of your life, the last thing you want is for someone to approach you with judgment or pity, which is a kind of judgment that just says, oh, I've looked at your situation and, oh, it's really just that bad. Nobody wants that. So we really need to figure out the difference between these things so that we can tell when we're giving one and not the other. The other thing that gets lumped in with empathy a lot is compassion. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The two do go together. But the thing with empathy is that it's completely passive. You just sit in empathy with the other person. It's what Brené Brown calls being in the suck. And I think that's a great way of putting it, because you're not offering solutions. You're not judging the other person. You're not taking responsibility or telling anyone else to take responsibility. You're just in that moment with that person. That's what empathy is. Now, a lot of times, empathy will give a feeling of discomfort in the person giving it because they want to help. And that feeling of discomfort will spur them to take action. That action is compassion. Empathy is what we feel. Compassion is what we do. So they are different. And this is important when we start talking about self-empathy. Having empathy for the self is kind of like self-awareness, but on steroids. Because it's not enough to just be aware of what's going on, but you actually go in and treat it actionably, giving yourself mercy, giving yourself that time to be in that place, giving yourself time maybe to heal, giving yourself time to understand the judgment that could be going on, that could be creating the problem in the first place. Because if empathy can lead to compassion, then self-empathy can lead to self-compassion. And that's important. Many times we treat ourselves far worse than we treat other people. And it's because we don't have that empathy for ourselves first.